Good. Life is good. It's
Yep.
always good.
Always good.
Yep.
And let's just touch on when we sat down. How's the feedback been from that podcast?
I think probably the biggest feedback that I got was my own feedback.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, I actually was able to sit down in the audience's seat and hear my own story. So while there was a lot of feedback from other people, I think the most valuable feedback was just listening to my own story and hearing some of the loopholes that perhaps I had missed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I think it was in all, it was a a pretty, as much as it was a nerve-wracking experience for you,
yeah,
opening up like that. I've also seen in the last couple of weeks your whole energy change behind that.
For sure.
I think it was a awesome thing to have done. And
for sure, I mean, I think it's really important when you. I believe everybody has a story to tell. Everyone has a very powerful story to tell. And I think listening to my own story was very empowering because it actually enabled me to hear how I had been steering my own life up until that point.
Yeah. I did say that. I think I've actually said that on other podcasts and stuff where I do use that analogy is that when you hear yourself say something, it's way more powerful. 100%, you know what I mean? So that's what I learned from my experience in therapy was to, once I heard myself say it, oh, look, we've got a third guest.
Our main guest today.
It's way more powerful hearing yourself say it, on playback. Sure. Right, let's introduce our main guest. Okay, Khyara Ranaweera, Miss Khyara Ranaweera. That's a mouthful, man. No, she's not Kiwi, as much as that last name pretty much sounds it. Sri Lankan background, British born, correct?
Yeah.
Get the mic. Do your thing, girl. So this is my friend, longtime friend. We've known each other for a while. I wanted to sit with her today. Everyone saw the post that I put up. Let me give you a bit of a background and let her take it over. So known each other for a while, good couple of years. Basically, why I wanted her on the ONETRIBE podcast today was to basically talk about life experience, more on the entrepreneur side of life, because mate, when I tell you your age, you're gonna shit. That's my response when she told me her age years ago. But the head on this girl's shoulders is it's very switched on. You know what I mean? So yeah, babe, welcome. Introduce yourself and tell me a bit about yourself.
I feel like that introduction was too good for me. I feel all shy now.
Don't be shy.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So tell me a bit about your background. So you've basically grown up in Dubai?
Yeah, so I think I moved here when I was about 13, originally with my parents. Went to school here, finished school here, then went back to the UK for university. It's great. And then came straight back, jumped straight into work. Literally, I think I was still at uni when I was hounding companies here to say, give me a job, give me my first job.
Yeah.
Worked here for about 4 years and then went back to the UK. Took a step down because I knew career-wise it was the right thing to do. Worked again 4 or 5 years and then I came back again in January now.
Beautiful. And let's just get it off the table. How old are you?
29.
29, right? So she's not even 30 yet. Give me a little bit of a touch around your background growing up. So obviously a very beautiful girl. Yeah, we give you compliments all the time about that. So I know you dabbled in like pageants. Are they pageants?
Yeah,
beauty pageants and stuff like that. So give me a bit of a history there. So
I mean, to be honest, I've always been super sporty. So completely on the opposite side. I've always played football, always been super competitive, played for the Women's League here in Dubai when I was in school, and played in the UK for a development squad. But at university, a friend of mine actually applied to be in one of the regionals for Miss England, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, do it, like great on you, like why the hell not? And the scout who was in our university was kind of like, oh, you should do it too. And I honestly, I laughed in his face.
Yeah.
I was literally I remember I was in the university bar in my football gear after a game, and I was kind of like, you're joking, right? And he was like, no, do it. And I was like, oh, why not? Can I swear?
Yeah.
Okay, fuck it, why not?
Yeah.
And because it was my best friend at the time, I was like, yeah, that's like, why the hell not? And I told my mom, and I don't know about you guys, but in Asian cultures, like pageants are huge. So I feel like more than the businesses that I've set up, almost my parents or my like Sri Lankan family were even more proud that I had done that.
Yeah.
My mom ended up coming over for finals. And it was honestly such an experience. It was great for my public speaking and confidence levels as a whole. You know, if you can get up and walk in front of people in a bikini or in your football kit or in a gown and in heels where you can barely see anyone, but you know that, you know, there's 100 people there. It's you can conquer anything. I think it was
I mean, you can now, you know, before we dive too much into that your whole entrepreneurship space, you can definitely credit a lot of that, a lot of the way you're going after business, you know, putting yourself out there to that background, correct?
100%. I think the whole pageant thing is almost a bit misunderstood a lot of the time. Everyone thinks it's very bitchy and it's very just very fake. But it's honestly not. Like, we were encouraged to make friends with the other girls, reach out to local community. Like, it was a chance for you to show that you were a good example for the others, and you were encouraged to be the best version of yourselves. And which I think it was a great lesson at 19, I think I was. So 10 years ago. So yeah, it was a great lesson. It was honestly something that I think has transformed my career and my life.
Awesome. Tones, you got any point, like anything on that in terms of that whole pageant life, or what that attributed to this side of her life, you know?
I mean, I'm just finding this out now that you were in pageant. Like, that's pretty cool. I guess what I'd be interested to hear is, like, you just touched on the effect that had on your mental health.
Yeah.
Can you dig a little bit deeper into that?
Yes. So it was my first year of university, and I was in a relationship at the time, pretty long-term relationship. You know, when you're in school, you think it's pretty serious.
Like,
and
you've
whatnot.
been in a relationship every year that I've known you. So anyway, go on.
I know. But it didn't end too well, and I'll be honest, like it took a toll on my mental health, and I lost so much self-confidence. I was in a pretty dark place, and it was an opportunity for me to really come out of it. And it was something to look forward to. During a time that I honestly was like, oh, I'm just not good enough, and just didn't feel good about myself at all. And it forced me to come out of that and to really look at myself differently.
So
I think.
could you say because obviously what that sounds like to me is it's external validation, right? Can you say that the experience that you had in the pageant maybe perhaps caused you to look internally?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was the first time that I really had to look at myself in a different way, if that makes sense. It's not something that I ever really thought about, and it was the first time I'd had an experience like I did, and so it was. Yeah,
because I mean, that's something that I've been kind of researching on recently in terms of mindset and psychology, is how we as humans, it's our basic human nature to seek connections with others, and when those connections are severed, it has a major impact. From my experience in terms of neglect and abandonment, it has a huge impact on the way our minds function, our mindset. So when somebody neglects you or abandons you, your self-worth, the way that you view yourself changes. And so we go through these experiences, and some of us keep seeking external validation in different shapes and forms. But what I found to be true for my story was that when I turned inward and found my own worth and my value, irrespective of the neglect and abandonment that happened, that's where I found my power.
Yeah. It's still a journey though. I'll be
for
honest.
Sure. 100%.
I think I go through probably that cycle, and I I'm learning a bit more about it. I was listening to a podcast the other day, actually. I can't remember the name of it, but they were talking about the worthiness wound, which was really, really interesting when I listened to it, and it hit home a lot of things, but I couldn't agree more. It's about finding that in yourself rather than seeking that externally. But that's easier said than done, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, I'll put my hand up and own up to that, because a lot of people that I connect with now, they think that I've got everything all together, and like, oh, you've got all the answers and your life is sorted. And I'm like, I can guarantee you, every day is a challenge, because what I found to be true in psychology is that the mind is constantly seeking comfort. You want to go back to the comfort zone. You want to go back to where it feels safe. And if you've grown up thinking in a particular mindset, and you're trying to challenge the mind to kind of veer off into a different direction, every day the mind can be like, let's just go back here where it feels safe. Like, why would we venture off into the unknown where, again, risk, danger, like...
But it's about then checking yourself and being able to go back on track or off track.
For sure.
And staying 100%. Off track.
Sorry, guys, we're sharing mics because we're short of mics. But so, right, so we touched on the pageant correlation to growing up, starting your career, etc. So let's get a bit into that. So starting your career, you left, I guess, college, high school, uni. You went to uni, obviously. Yep. Went to uni, and you enter your first, I guess, full-time career as...
I actually worked throughout university.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know this, but I set up my first business when I was about 13, 14.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So I've always been super entrepreneurial. Like,
that's cool.
Even as a kid, like when we were in London, I used to be that kid that was not with a lemonade stand, but we'd sell, I don't know, like macaroons and make hammer bead little coaster things. And...
That's that Sri Lankan hustler in candy, just like selling your bracelets and shit. Like, but that's what it is, right?
This is back in the day, like this is before all these editing suites and stuff. This is like Microsoft like Paint or something, and making a poster and hand drawing it as well and putting it around the neighborhood and making sales. Like, I was younger then when that was happening, but when we moved to Dubai, I love to bake. Love to bake, and my mum loves to bake. She always used to make all my birthday cakes and for everyone else. And she started, more and more people started asking for it. So I was like, Mum, we should just set up a business and start selling cakes. And so that's kind of where it started. It was called DK Cakes back in the day.
Oh, so it was a name and everything.
There was a name. There was branding. I took it quite seriously. My mum did basically the cake baking.
And you were the saleswoman.
I was a saleswoman. We had a Facebook page at the time, probably still there somewhere. We also did classes during half term. We had 2 classes. They were full, an older group and a younger group. So I designed like a week workshop for these kids.
That's sick.
That's sick. And created like a little take home pack. We did a whole schedule where it ended with like a cake show at the end of the week where the parents came in. And it was amazing.
Mum was switched on. Like, you try that shit in 2021, it'd be called child slave labor. And you'd be all fucked. But no, that's cool. I mean, the respect for money and the respect for earning the dollar is instilled in you pretty early then, right? So like, you've got 100%. That, and I said it before, is that you have that go get it mentality. You don't sit around, like, so that's awesome. So you start working quite early. Let's go into a bit of a professional career. So into leading up to what you're doing now, right? So what was that career, and how did you get your foot in the door for that first door opening?
I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do originally. Like, when I was still in school, I thought I wanted to do architecture, which is completely different. It wasn't until we were applying for universities that my dad was kind of like, "Oh, you should try out PR." And I was like, "What's PR?" I didn't even know what it was. So I switched and ended up doing business at uni. Loved the marketing element of it. Loved the consumer behavior side of it. Actually, I thought it was really fascinating. And it wasn't until during university, like I said, I worked at a couple bars, and so I helped them with some of their social media and whatnot. That I interned here in Dubai during one of my summers. So I think after my second year, I interned with an agency that I really respected. The founder was this female entrepreneur. It was a small agency at the time. They're pretty big now. I actually went back and worked there years later. And I was just like, I love what you do. I read this article about you in this paper. I would love to like learn from you, kind of thing. Did like a month, 2 months, I think, internship, and she offered me a job to like not go back to uni and to stay. Yeah. And I was very tempted. I was very, very tempted. As much as, university is great, but it's a piece of paper for me at the end of the day. I think I learned more I learned so much more by the odd jobs that I did at university.
Being on the job.
Yeah, like I was selling key rings at one point, but I learned, you learn the customer service element of it. You learn how to navigate different behaviors and different customers and whatnot. So it was that was my starting point. While in my last year, I was still, working my dissertation, and I started ringing up agencies here in Dubai. Annoyed the hell out of this one director at this agency, but I'm glad I did, because she's an absolute legend, and I still respect the hell out of her. And I got my first job. Literally came straight to Dubai in probably March, whatever year it was, 2013 maybe.
Yeah.
And started straight away. Loved it. Loved PR and the agency I was at. I was naturally more interested in the digital side of things. I was always like, oh, I want to try doing this. Or I want to do this. I want to do this. And then while I was still at this agency, I set up another business. So it was an e-commerce skirt business.
Yeah.
So I had a tailor that used to do my pageant dresses years before, and she was amazing. I used to like Zoom her and Skype her and whatever else. And I was like, because I'm quite short, I'm only 5'2", so I find it really difficult to.
If we stand up, we'll stand up for the thumbnail of this. But yeah, I mean, she's like the GoPro.
Oh, thanks. But yes, I used to find it really difficult to find stuff that fit. So I started getting skirts made, and then I was kind of like, oh wait, why don't I turn this into a little bit of business? So we set up Khyara skirts. Again, did everything, did the website myself, did the social. We did a shoot. I ended up doing makeup myself for the girls as well. It was a lot of fun, and it was an opportunity for me to really push myself to learn a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was a lot. It was a lot of time, a lot of commitment. And I realized I got to a point where I was like, I either have to do this full time and go into this, or I have to just put it aside. So I put it aside.
Yeah.
Worked a bunch more agencies, developed my career, got to a director level pretty quickly, just because I was so hungry for it.
How old were you in this? Around what age?
When I set up the skirt business?
Director.
It was when I left Dubai, so 21, 22.
Wow. Okay. That's young. Like if you look back at that now, you look like nobody teaches you how to handle pressure, especially when you're dealing with adults now. Like you're still a kid at 20, especially in Dubai. Like you know, it's only until you're 30 sort of you start realizing that everyone's your age, but in your 20s, everyone's like older out here, especially in that professional element. So
I was burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
I was going out, Mahiki back in the day, but don't get me wrong, everyone was in the same boat. So, we take journalists and bloggers out and go for ladies' nights, and then I'd be
but
on
you're
the
20,
phone.
so you can, you can get up. Imagine trying to do that shit now. It wouldn't
Hell no.
fly, you know what I mean? So you get a director's position quite young. Touch on that. So was that a lot of pressure?
Oh, it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was long days, long nights. I was managing a team. What happened was my director went on maternity leave, so I stepped up into her role and took on a team, which was a crazy amount of pressure. I look back now and it was too much. It wasn't the right situation.
Yeah.
I was sick. There were days where I was so stressed. I remember distinctly one time where I was working on a new business pitch with the owner of the company, and I was so stressed. I hadn't slept, nothing. And I ran to the bathroom to be sick, and then came back and carried on working on it. And then was sick on the way home as well, just from anxiety and just from the stress. And I think it was then my partner at the time, he saw it too, and he was like, this is just not worth
it's not
it.
working, it's a tough one, because you probably get involved here, is that I feel being so young, no one teaches you to handle that kind of pressure, whatever it is. But talking about Dubai more so is that you're mixing it with the big boys now, all right? So you get involved in these situations, and you're sitting in meetings, and sometimes it crosses your mind, like, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm so out of place and I have no right being at the same table as these people, where in terms of it's not a confidence thing, but it's like these people are legit and there's so many years of experience here. What do you think makes or gives that, like, these kinds of people confident, or these kinds of people that confidence to stick in, or like make themselves, like you did, you made yourself sick trying to keep up, basically, you know what I mean? Not in a bad way, but you don't know, like, I could tell you now as your friend, like, you need to back off. Like, if I saw a change in your energy or shift, like, work's not everything. Like, I'm only learning that now. I'm almost 40, because I was like her at one stage, right?
Yep.
What do you reckon? Like, where's the shift for that drive, or why do people push themselves to that extent?
I suppose, I mean, just listening to your story, it sounds, and from based on the research that I've done into mindset and psychology, we touched on this before we got on air, how the brain is conditioned to think in a particular way, and it all goes back to the childhood. When you're a child, when your brain is fresh and new, it's just absorbing everything around you, and you learn from your main teachers, mum and dad, or your primary caregivers. They're the ones that you pick up all these behaviors from. And so if you're in a household where there is passion or there's drive to be successful, you picked it up as a kid. You see the people that you look up to driving themselves to be successful, to ensure that they're reaching you see this and you pick it up, and so that's how you grow up. I mean, I know that to be true in my life. So what I picked up in my childhood, I'm living it all out now, and I'm just realizing that now at 34. I'm like, holy crap, I'm realizing that all these behaviors that I'm living now all comes back from what I picked up on as a child. So yeah, I just find it very fascinating listening to your story, because as you were explaining how you became a director at 21, 22, I mean, irrespective of that, I was thinking, what was I doing at 21, 22?
But even if you became a director at 30, like that's huge. Like, director roles these days, like, you're in your late 40s,
exactly.
like things like that.
So just listening to that, the first thing that I went to in my mind was, I want to hear mum and dad's story. Because she's learned this from somewhere. People learn these things in their childhood. So, I mean, we don't necessarily have to go into that now, but I was just fascinated. Like, I'd love to hear the back.
That's a cool question. Because, like, Dad's got a legendary name, right? Her dad's name is Nigel, funnily enough. But yeah, let's touch on that. So, your parents, like, give me a bit of are they, like, I'm assuming, like, immigrant parents who moved to England, or what's the story there? Like, because, like, I guess that's what we all have in common as, like, Pacific Islanders and stuff like that, is that there was once that move, whoever made it, grandmother, grandpa, whatever it was. What's the background there?
So, hope we have some time for that. So, my biological dad, actually, he is very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
But I don't know him that well.
Okay.
I haven't really spent much time. When I was younger, a little bit more time. I used to go to his office sometimes, but don't really know him as much. Never really lived with him. And he's super entrepreneurial.
Where's he from?
He's Sri Lankan.
Okay.
So he has multiple businesses in the UK and in Sri Lanka as well. So I guess, yes, part of it's there. My mum, when she left my dad, she hustled hard. Like, she literally worked so many jobs just to, like, put food on the table, to buy milk.
She's a boss too, man. Like,
if
you ever get, I've met her mum a couple of times, like, proper awesome, cool lady, you know what I mean?
She's a bit crazy. Cool. She's cool. But yeah, she's hustled hard, like, and she's so strong, like, so strong. She's got through so much.
Yeah.
And obviously, leaving my dad when I was about 2 years old, so it was just the two of us. We were in a tiny apartment. We were basically homeless at one point. Like, it was, she hustled hard to, like, and then she met my stepdad. and she stopped working because she had more kids. But my dad is who I call my stepdad my dad. He is my dad more than anything else. He has worked so hard his whole career. Like, so he was in investment banking.
Yeah.
But
Where's he from?
Guyanese.
Okay.
He's from Guyana, but his parents moved over to London when they were very young.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure he was born and raised in London
Yeah.
as well. So he's pretty much very English. But yeah, he's more of my dad anyway. But he's worked hard, like, since day dot. You know, there's been times where certain jobs he's worked and we barely see him.
Yeah.
And so I think I definitely get what you said. And I think I probably get that from him, seeing how hard he worked. And that's almost instilled on me that I should be working that hard in order to.
Well, absolutely. To touch on that, bro, is that what we went through with yours in terms of like trauma's passed down, or even doesn't always have to be trauma, where like you get like that success gene put into that graft gene.
Yep, 100%. I mean, trauma doesn't necessarily have to have a capital T, does it? Like, I think a lot of people perceive trauma as something that's an event that is quite catastrophic, and it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma with a capital T. It can be a series of mini events that occur in your life that impact the way that you think, impact the ways that you behave. Obviously, when I told my story is full of heavy trauma, which is how I managed to overcome that. But listening to your story, and what I've picked up connecting with different people, is that trauma doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. Trauma can also be perceived as any kind of event that has an impact on the way the person behaves, thinks, and operates. And that can also be a positive thing.
100% think it's a positive thing. I know I'm skipping around a little bit, but I think what kind of happened towards, the end of last year and this year, I think it was traumatic, but it's made me who I am today and the business owner that I am today. And I wouldn't be where I am with my business now if any of that didn't happen.
Yeah, I was going to say that is that I feel like, a lot of podcasts we listen to have it's almost like that blueprint storyline where you needed a shit life to become successful. You don't need that.
No,
not everyone has a shit life. Some people are blessed to go through life, and that's awesome. I wish we could all have that experience. Some people don't, some people do. You can't judge somebody on that, right? So this brings me to my next little segue with you, is that right? So, 29 years of age, you are now working for yourself. You've got your own business. Touch on the business.
So I actually originally set it up 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was just working. So it's called the Conscious Consultancy.
Yeah.
We are an the first impact and change driven agency in the UAE. Originally I set it up after I spent some time in Greece. And I realized, I love what I do, but I wasn't making a difference. So I worked with some charities and whatnot. Then reset it up this year in January, and we've grown, not January, sorry, it was about February, March officially, I think. And we've grown, like our client base has grown mainly through word of mouth, through friends and through family. And we are 5 strong now, which is crazy.
So that's a big, I wanted to say this before, is that a lot of people, like, knowing how young she was when she started the graft, I feel like even at our age now, 30, I don't know, 25, 30 to 40, people overthink starting business. Should I, shouldn't I? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Just business can be anything. Just do something. Like, you're going to have the failures. You're going to have, the roadblocks that you hit. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like all of us are doing something that's already been done. It's how you package it and present it your way that makes it a success, So, the proof's in the pudding next to me is that she was young. She still is young, and now she's working for herself. She's got a team of 5 that work with her, and big things to come. And it's only up to you how big you take it. You know
100%. And it's honestly, I'll be honest, like, for such a long time, I said to myself, I'm not going to start an agency up. I'm not going to start an agency up. I'm not going to start. I honestly said it categorically for such a long time. I had the opportunity before and I was like, no, it's not the right time. But then, like you said, there's never a right
No, of
time,
course not.
but it's
Of
about
course not.
coming out of your comfort zone and taking the risk.
Yeah.
And pushing yourself to do that.
And it's passion too. You need passion
Yeah.
to start business. You can't just you can't just get into a business just because. You need the passion. You need to wake up, because there's going to be months, weeks, whatever, maybe years that no money's earned. You know what I mean? But if you keep on getting up and being persistent with, you know, consistency every day, that's what's going to get you across the line. All right, so we've heard about the business, and you know that's awesome. So you're on a new journey there. Let's go back a little bit. You touched on it a little bit just before. Again, full, you know, I don't want to ask you shit that you don't want to talk about, but I think it's important to even just, you know, if you don't talk about it, you sort of narrow it down. But mental health in life, let alone being an entrepreneur, is something that we don't look after. I know for myself, everyone's heard my story. It wasn't until only, like, you know, I don't know, 5 years ago that I started to go, listen, if I don't look after my brain, I won't be around to have a business. You know what I mean? So, you know, what's your story? I know you're 29. You've gone. I know personally, being your mate, you've gone through some shit. As I said, you don't have to go into the ins and outs of it, but having these things happen over the last, say, I don't know, let's say 5 honest years, right? After you become more of a, you know, adult, how has this transformed your mindset to what I'm sitting next to today? Like, you're very, because, you know, it wasn't long ago that there was a different version of you sitting next to me, right? So touch on that.
It's honestly such a journey, and I think I'm still going through it. There was a lot going on. It was, you know, but I think it was a case of, thank you. I don't even know where to start with this. So it's, first of all, I think it's a conversation that is still not had enough. It's something that for such a long time I don't think I spoke about, like anxiety and depression and everything else. Like, it was still such a thing that still had such a taboo. Yeah. And so certain behaviors and certain feelings that I had and that was going on around me, I just thought was normal for such a long time, because we don't talk about it. So when I was in a really toxic work situation, or when I was in a really toxic relationship, I completely ignored all the signs, absolutely everything. And I didn't realize the impact it was having on my mental health. Completely ignored it. It built up, it built up, it built up, it built up and built up.
Is it because a number of factors here, but like I said, with Tony, with you, like the upbringing you had and the traumas that you saw and faced, it was hard for you to even speak about, but these were normality for you, right? I feel like for you, where you grew up with a loving mother and father, right? Yes or no? Like, yeah, like it wasn't like a broken home, apart from 2 years old, right? But success, like there's a lot of success in that family, right? So there's that. So does it almost feel like that when you start feeling like this as a 25-year-old, 30-year-old, you don't know what the feeling is because you've never sort of seen it amongst anyone you know, or the family, or there wasn't, like, is it a thing where you don't want to put that foot forward because, like, I'm not meant to feel like this because I haven't seen it yet, you know what I mean?
A little bit. I mean, there's obviously been things that have happened, like within the family, that I've had to deal with. You know, being the eldest, it's been a case of me stepping up a lot of the time. But kind of going back to what you said about what you see when you're a child, is that I've seen my family and I've seen loved ones, not, I don't want to say brush under the rug, but almost put on a brave face for such a long time. And that's what I've seen pretty much my whole life. And that's what I continue to try and do. And that was the mistake that I made. That was where I went wrong. And that's what we need to stop doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think mental health, people perceive mental health as a weakness, I think. But I think we need to change the way we look at mental health. Just listening to you guys talking before about, starting your own business and kind of coming outside of your comfort zone, I see that as vulnerability. Having the courage to show up constantly when you don't know what the outcome's going to be. It takes a lot of courage just to constantly show up in life when you literally have no idea, is this going to work? Is this going to be a failure? I don't know what the outcome is, but I still choose to show up.
Yeah.
And it's in that showing up. I think it's one thing to continually show up, but also listening to what's going on mentally. Because if you're continually showing up in a way that's detrimental to your mental health, you're only shooting yourself in the foot. I was going to ask you a question, but now I've just kind of gone off on a tangent.
What in terms of I've seen she's got siblings, right? You're the oldest, yeah. So met one of your sisters just recently. Again, with the ordeal, the shit you went through this year, what impact did having siblings have for you to go, right, time to pull my shit together? And not everybody needs to pull their shit together, but you get, I believe, you get better for people, like, because get better for yourself, number one, but number two, I would want to be a strong role model for my younger brother who looks up to me and go, right, yeah, I went through shit, but I also came out the other side a better person. So what impact did that have?
I guess to answer this though, I kind of have to go back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I mean, honestly, like stuff that's happened, I went down so far that I didn't even think about the impact it would have on other people, which is terrible to say because I love my siblings. Like I love them. They're like my children. But I was so down that I just didn't care. And I saw the impact that it had on them at that point, and it made me want to be better, if that makes sense. So I feel like I hit rock bottom. I really did. And I saw the impact it had on them, and I saw how they were and how concerned they were. And my sister, honestly, so our family, like, I love my family so much, but we were never super, super close. Like, there's 5 of us, 5 kids and my parents, but we've never been like a super close family. And that's just how, I was listening to this podcast I talked about the other day, and it's you receive love and you give love the way that you've received it, if that makes sense. So your parents would have done the same thing. So the way that they had love was very different. So they weren't very close with their parents. They weren't very open to have that relationship. So that's what's passed on. So we weren't very close. But when all this happened and I kind of hit rock bottom, like my sister was just, something changed with our relationship. She stepped up massively. And honestly, it brings tears to my eyes because I don't know what I would have done without her. Like, I was still in the UK when I hit rock bottom, and she took charge. Like, she's not even the second eldest. My brother is between us, but she just looked after me, basically. She brought me over to Dubai. We came and trained with you. And she honestly, like, I just don't think I would have made it through without her. She was just there for me in a way that I felt so comfortable that when I'd lost everyone else and lost the people that I thought would be there for me, she was there for me in a way that I can't even put into words.
I met your sister when you got back, and you didn't know this. Me and her were talking every time we'd finish, right? I talked to her and I'm like, you need to keep an eye out on her, because like the main focus obviously was to get her better, because she was in a shit place, you know what I mean? And as a mate, you're like you never want to see someone, but again, my words aren't going to do much unless she wants to pull herself out of it. And you had a tough time coming in and out, and some days were better than the others, and that's normal. But it was your sister that I would speak to every day after we'd be done, and I'm like, I'd have more conversation with her and say, look, she's young, man. How old is she?
She is turning 21 in October.
Like similar to you, where a 21-year-old is now has this on their shoulders. Right, this is her sister. This is her older sister, and like she stepped up, man. Like, and so speaking to a 21-year-old, and telling her just to like, keep an eye on your sister, not for any other reason, but get her through this because she's going to need her mates now. And it's the funniest thing when you're down on your luck, everyone fucking disappears. That's usually the way it happens, unfortunately. Dubai is a funny place because you can be best friends with someone for 10 years and all of a sudden that's gone over whatever reason. Yeah, all your life, I mean? So, speaking to her sister was huge because I knew I was dealing with a kid essentially, and having that on her shoulders was massive. But to see the dynamic shift, knowing that she was the older one, this girl led from the front, you know what I mean? While she was finding her way, which was massive. So, I mean, you had that sort of experience as well. Like when you are forced to lead, you will. That instinct takes over. No one can teach you that, right?
For sure. I think just listening to your story, what resonates with me is these generational cycles that exist before us. When we talk about mental health and we identify people's pain points in life, you can trace it back to these generational cycles, and I think it takes a lot of courage for people like I truly believe our generation now are the people who are identifying these patterns, picking up on the cycles that exist before our time, and are choosing to show up and say, this isn't working.
Yeah.
There has to be a better way. There has to be a more effective way to live life.
Just from that conversation and putting two and two together, you said that it was just you and your mum for a long time, and mum did whatever she needed to put food on the table, get you through life so to survive. Skip a generation, younger sister gets that mentality. Not saying you don't have that mentality. The motherly instinct that I saw, that I don't even know this girl, took over like that. Because most people would go, shit, I can't deal with this. This is too much. They back out. It's not their fault. That's definitely not their fault. But I saw it. You know what I mean? So it's like that. It gets passed down. You know what I mean? So, I mean, yeah, I didn't want to cut you off, but like I did see a massive shift, and you were being led by a younger sibling. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, but she just, the way that she pulled through, honestly, I wouldn't have been able to do anything without her.
Do you think that's had what kind of impact has that had on how you carry yourself today?
Oh, I think, do you know what? I think it was a good thing ultimately, because it's forced me to be a little bit more open with my siblings and try to push for us to have that better relationship. Because otherwise we weren't having those kind of conversations. It would be almost like a very superficial family dynamic where you just don't have those honest conversations. So I'm trying. It's still a journey, especially I'm trying with my mom and my dad as well, to have those, being able to put boundaries in and have those honest conversations. It's going to take time, but it's definitely forced me to be more open to it and open myself up to it.
100%. What I know to be true is that on the other side of our biggest fears is creativity, change. Like for example, when we recorded our first podcast, the relationships that I had with my siblings, they were as they have always been. But since showing up to that podcast and speaking my truth and having the courage to try to break these generational cycles or patterns, my relationship with my siblings it's just completely changed. Like the brother that there's three of us, the younger one of the three, we're now on Zoom once a week talking. That was something that never existed before the podcast. So I think the more people take, the more courage that people have to show up in life and start talking about the hard stuff and trying to unpack all of these patterns that exist before us, I think is only beneficial for all of us, not just yourself, but those who you love the most,
I was going to say, did your brothers when you came out, did everyone know, or did only your mum?
No, the brother after me, he was the first person I ever told.
Okay.
When I came out.
Yeah.
And that was because I literally felt so isolated. The life that I'd lived, I thought I need to turn to someone, and my brother, who is the closest one to me, he was just there, and he was I mean, looking back at it now, I know that my brother's going through his own personal journey. To kind of dump that on someone, because there's 6 years between us, and to kind of dump that kind of big information onto someone who isn't prepared to hear it, perhaps because of the way we were all brought up. We were all brought up in a very strict Christian home, and to come out as gay, like, whoa, you know. But he still showed up. He still stood his ground and was like, you know what, you're still my brother, and I love you no matter what. And I think that's testament to our generation. Like, I imagine my mum and her siblings, if one of them had come out maybe 50, 60 years ago, completely different.
Wasn't going to fly, yeah.
And like I said, these kind of behaviors are learnt. And I know that it was a struggle for my siblings to kind of, and I think it still is, it's still a process to kind of unwrap the mind on the way it's been conditioned to think about these taboo topics of homosexuality, for example. But I give a lot of credit to them for still showing up, irrespective of the way that we've been raised to think.
Absolutely. I see a massive, like, very familiar in terms of the Pacific and Asian culture, like family dynamic. Like, as much as family is a lot to us, we can't talk. Like you know, and you know, there is love in the families, but like, you can't step forward and say, "Oh, I'm going through a mental battle," because they'll, like, usually it's like, "Oh, okay."
What I've identified it as is shame. It's shame.
Is that what you feel like in terms of that whole Asian side of?
100%. It's just not really something you talk about. Like, it's still, I even felt like, even when even when everything happened, like when I hit rock bottom, like, it still wasn't really talked about. We never really talked about, in fact, we never really talked about it. I had a couple incidents when I was younger as well, and it was the same. We never spoke about it. And that's something that needs to change. So I agree with the family cycling.
I've done a lot of research into shame since our podcast, because I identified shame as the most crippling factor. And it was the common denominator of what I know to be true, not just for my story, but listening to my cousins' stories, my aunties' and uncles' stories. It's shame. And what they did this, I actually need to find out. I need to find out where this test was actually done. But at some university in America, they were scanning the brain of the person, and they poured hot water on the person, and the parts of the brain that are associated with pain highlighted. They took that same person and started engaging in a conversation around shame, feeling unloved or feeling like they didn't belong. The same parts of the brain highlighted pain. So there's what we have, physical pain, and then we have emotional pain. And that's when you, just listening to you just about 20 seconds ago, we never talked about it. We never spoke about it. The reason why we're not talking about it is because it's painful to talk about these things. Like, listening to the
painful.
That's why it's shame is pain. It's emotional pain. When we're talking about topics that are so taboo to us, it's too painful to speak about it, so we just don't talk. And I think that's something we as a society need to start stepping up and
100%.
taking it as a challenge.
100%. I told you about the other day, I was, having a business is tough, right? It's tough. There are days where, I'm sure everyone goes through this, there are days where I've had a long day with work, and honestly, I feel so exhausted. I come home and I just cry. I don't even know why, but I do.
This the other day, yeah.
And but it's not like I'm going through a really shit time or anything like that. I know tomorrow's going to be a better day. It's just been an exhausting day, and I'm just exhausted, pretty much.
Nothing wrong with that, though.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm trying to be more open about it, and I think that's needed. So I put something on Instagram the other day, only to my close friends, followers, and it was basically me just saying I came home and I cried today. And mainly did it because I want to be more honest about it. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, I've got other friends that are entrepreneurs, we need to be able to be honest about it. Be able to have those conversations so you don't feel as alone. And the majority of the feedback, honestly, to that was, you'll get through it. I love that you're being so honest and open about it. Like, well done you for showing your truth.
Sure. Yeah.
And being open about it, because it's not something that people talk about. But there was one response that was not as welcoming. There was it was more about, it shouldn't really be shared. And okay, everyone has their own opinion, that's perfectly fine, but I honestly do believe that the only way that we can tackle the mental health issue is to talk about it.
100%. And that needs to, like, you can be that one in your family that pivots this whole road and it goes this way, and your younger brothers and sisters will start being more open. I mean, now you've gone through stuff, and like you said, it's a long road to getting where you want to be, and this is a part of the journey. But I mean, it'd kill you to know if younger sister, younger brother was going through some shit and they could never step up and talk to you. That would kill me.
It honestly would.
I'm sure it's happened to me because I've been here for so long.
Yeah.
My younger brother has needed me or needed somebody at times, and I wasn't able to be there or be that, set of ears for him to listen to. So that, knowing that what I went through kills me, going, well, because you feel alone, man. It's the darkest place in the world. It kills me because he's my younger brother, and I'm like, fuck, I would never want him to go, let alone anybody, but him to go through that. So yeah, doing stuff like this, whether people watch it or not, it's just good to have that conversation and be open, because we've got nothing to hide, we've got nothing to be ashamed of. But like you said, if it helps your younger sister or brother text you tomorrow and say, listen, this, that, and the other, like, fucking sweet. That's what we're there. That's family.
100%.
I mean, like, that's what this is all meant to be. You know what I mean? You're not meant to be ashamed of shit you do. Like, if you murdered someone, ring me and tell me, because that's what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to tell somebody.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we touched on that. Let's just hit on growth. I want to talk about growth for a little bit, and then we'll wrap it up. But like, so, going through the hard times, there's always going to be hard times, but there's always going to be even better times to sort of follow that. So I feel like you're getting there now, starting this business. You're still young, plenty of mistakes to be made and plenty of lessons to be learned still. But where do you see this next sort of 6 months to a year, business-wise, your own personal growth-wise? Where do you want to sort of see yourself?
That's a lot there in that question. So, I mean, business-wise, I'm still working on being able to balance things. That's going to be a huge thing for me over the next few months. I don't know what you guys think about angel numbers, and maybe it's a bit la-di-da, but there are things called angel numbers when you see them quite a lot.
Speak to him, I don't know. I'm old school.
Oh, do you know what angel numbers are?
I've heard of them.
Okay, so it's usually when you see like a sequence of numbers, but you see them over and over and over again, and it's meant to be like someone looking over you and telling you what to do. So lately, I've been seeing the number 2222 a lot, like 4 twos in a row. And it's honestly, normally it's not something that I think about, or I'm not as into it as other people. Yeah. But I just keep seeing this number, kept seeing it. And I was like, right, I'm going to look it up. And the angel number 2222, whatever, 4 twos, is basically telling you that you need to balance and that you need to sort out that balance between different things. And I know that's something that I'm struggling with at the moment. So for me, it's resonating really well.
Just listening to that, as you were talking about balance and you were explaining the angel numbers, what was going through my mind was, because it's the journey that I'm on at the moment, is I know what, when I look back over my life, there's different seasons, I guess, where I would be focused on the body. Another season where I'd be focused recently on the mind. And probably maybe the first couple of seasons was focused on spirituality or soul. And where I'm kind of, the season I'm going into now is finding the balance between these 3 dynamics of mind, body, and soul. And I think when you find that balance, you step into your true power and you're able to tap into your limitless potential.
100%. And that's what I need to focus on. I know for the next 6 months, it's balance, because ultimately that will affect my business. It will affect my personal life. It'll affect everything. It's being able to balance all. I've always been very good at throwing myself into work. And I think that's just what I've grown up learning to do, throwing myself into work and ignoring everything else and not being able to focus on more than one thing at a time. But for me, it's about finding that balance and developing that. I mean, the business is doing well and I want to keep, that passion alive. And I think in order to keep that alive, I need to figure out that balance a bit better.
And yes, you bang on. Like, as I said, it takes a long time to figure out balance. And, when this is your livelihood and this is your living, sometimes this takes like full warrant and relationships break down and fucking, but until those things happen, you go, oh shit, I need a balance, right? So like for you to check these mistakes, not mistakes, but check these lessons before they happen or as you feel them happening, pull back. Business, you know how to make money. You've been making money since you're 14. So that's not an issue. Like, and work is work. You can go to work because you're passionate, or you can go and work at Spinneys. Money's money. So I don't believe the work ethic's not there for anybody. If you had to go and work in Spinneys, you would. Big shit, it's a job. So money can be made anytime, but losing relationships, losing friendships, that once they're done, and they're hard to get back. You know what I mean? Or telling somebody before they pass, or like spending that time with. It's cliche. You hear it all the time, but fucking hell, it's not until they've gone you realize I should have slowed my life down a little bit. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely, like balance, and I think we all need balance. And I'll touch on it because I've wrote it down. So love and friendships, like as far as I know, you're single still, which is a good thing. You need to be single, right? But also, I mean, I think from what I know of you, you're also growing in that direction too, like growth-wise. Like it's not just when you're younger. Like it is what it is. Like you could say the love word to everybody. Do you mean it? Maybe not. Like I guess they always say you'll know when it comes, when it's real. But what's your take on that as well? Balancing your business, love, friendships. Like, what's your take on now? You see it on this side.
Honestly, I'm still learning. It's so tough. Again, like I said, like maybe it's a defense mechanism or what, but I find it easier for me to throw myself into work and to ignore everything else, including like relationships. I know I've seen my own relationships probably break down because of it. And I know it's something that I need to work on and be better at. I think for me, it's safety, right? I know that I'm good at what I do and I feel safe doing it. Going back to what you said about safety. And it's, so I mean, it's still something I'm working on, to be honest. With friendships, it's TBC.
Just my take on the whole work aspect. I touched on it in our podcast before this one. I see a lot of people using work as, like you described it, as a safety or coping mechanism. It could potentially be a distraction for your mind, a distraction from the issues that you really need to confront or tackle on head on. Yes. Going to the love aspect, friendships, what I know to be true is that when I focus externally on maintaining these relationships, whether they be friendships or personal relationships, they never work out when my focus is on the other person. When my focus is on me and learning to love myself first and foremost, everything else just falls into place. They just gravitate towards you more naturally.
You need to tattoo that on your fucking back. Shut up.
I know. It's like I said, like balance goes back to over the last few months, like the business has taken over again. And I feel like I've kind of wandered back onto the path that I didn't want to be on, where I've seeking that external validation again, not looking and loving myself as much, which is why I need to get back off that path and onto the.
Well, it's good that you can you can
recognize
flag it now.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, you wouldn't have.
No,
You didn't know what this
not
feeling
even early,
was.
not even like last year. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, to wrap it up, you're 29, you're an entrepreneur, you've got your own business. What would you tell anyone, but let's target the 20 to 30-year-olds about not fearing about starting a business, not fearing about making mistakes, and just in general, like if you don't need money to start a business, right? So give me like something in a couple of minutes on that, because that's the most important thing, I think, in that. If I knew what I knew now, I could tell that 20-year-old kid, fucking hell, like, I'd kill it. You know what I mean? But you don't learn until you make these mistakes and stuff. So I feel like we can be that, you know, that pathway for some of these people if they listen, because we look up on mentors. I've got people I look up to, and I listen to them. You know what I mean? You try to. Everyone's got to make their own mistakes, but what would you tell this young generation about, you know, self-validation, etc., etc.? Like, is it needed? Is it not needed? Can you stay away from it?
I think the best piece of advice that I've received from my therapist was to listen to your body in more ways than one. So listen to your heart about what you're passionate about and follow that. If you think that, you know, you have an idea and you're passionate about something and you think you can make it work, that fear and that anxiety inside you, it's going to be there for, you know, till day dot. But it's about challenging that and pushing through. But also when I say listening to your body, it's about feeling everything too. So this book that I'm reading, I would recommend it, and I mentioned it to you earlier, called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. One of the keys that she talks about, and I won't give it all away, but one of the keys that she talks about is to feel and feel everything. So listening to your body and how your body reacts to certain things and understanding why it reacts that way, but also accepting the way that you feel about certain things. So if you do feel down about something, if you do feel anxious about something, accept it. Don't try and put it away. Don't try and hide it, which I did for such a long time, and it made it worse. If you're having a down day, accept it, channel it, figure out how you can channel that positively, how you can, sorry. But how you can work through it, you know? So, you know, if I am feeling super overwhelmed and having a down day, I will say to my team and I will say to my clients, I'm taking a day. I will.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to do that. So, I mean, take it how you want, but listen to your body is probably the most important thing, because I think it goes to your heart, your soul, everything. Listen to your body.
There is so much truth to that. Your body's always keeping score and will always win out, no matter how hard you try to ignore it. Like I said to you before, I don't believe in suppression. It's probably the biggest lesson from my life so far, as I just don't believe in suppression. The more you suppress, the more build up you get, and the more 100%. It will just come and knock you the fuck out. So if I were to give anyone any advice, don't suppress. You know, feel what you need to feel, work through the motions. Don't run from the fear of what you're feeling. Go head into it. And on the other side of that is change, creativity.
100%. It's like, you know, when you've got a tough thing on your to-do list, what's the first thing you should technically do, right? Is do that first. Tackle that first, right? So it's kind of the same thing. It's just accepting what's in front of you and
absolutely. Like, and just to add to that before we wrap it up, I put something up on the work page on, I think it was yesterday. Like, I finished my workout in the morning and I was like, you know, I overheard a conversation in the gym, you know what I mean? And it was this young fella trying to give advice, like fitness advice, to this young girl for whatever the outcome was. I mean, a lot of it sounded wrong, but whatever. Who am I to say that, right? But my point being is that everyone's got an opinion on how to do life, right? And you're like, oh, don't do it this way, you should do it that way, or why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And I just made up this post. It's probably, you know, everyone knows I can't spell or fucking punctuate for shit, so it's probably like written all wrong, but the intent was there to say everybody has an opinion about how to do life. You know, guess what? You know, like, you're going to make all the mistakes in life, like we all have. how to do life is to learn from it, learn from those mistakes, but at the same time, make memories, laugh, love the people around you, and most of all, try your fucking best at everything. Because nobody can fault you if you're trying your best. If you fail 100 times and you've tried your best, who fucking cares?
Yeah.
You can sleep, sound at night saying, I left it all out on the pitch, or whatever, however the analogy you want to use, is that you can only do your best at things, you know what I mean? And that's yours to own, not somebody else to judge, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Just on that, actually. So in that book I was telling you about, it kind of goes back to what you said. She talked, I think one of the second keys was like, know it. So the first one was feel it. I think the second one is like, know it. And it's about how we go through various transformations in life, right? We evolve as humans and we're constantly evolving. So we learn from different lessons and different things that happen through our lives. And when there's something ahead of you that seems difficult and that seems like you want to ask someone else what they want to do, no one else has gone through what you've gone through. No one else has lived your life. No one else thinks the way you do, has experienced things the way you feel like you do. So the only way that you can go through something is by going through it yourself.
Yeah.
And as much as, we all want a little bit of validation and we all want advice from someone else, the best way is to go through it and tackle it yourself and then learn from that, because that's when the best transformation, and you end up improving yourself, learning and growing as a human.
Just to one more thing, because it's just come to my, I could go, I mean, it's fucking over an hour, but I will say this is something I've learned, is always sit at a table of people that have the same either mindset or ideology as you, because success breeds success. You don't all have to be successful at the table, but you want to be able to shoot ideas across the table and they're getting shot back. And I feel like not enough of that gets done here in Dubai, for sure. Everyone's quick to shit on an idea, but nobody's, sitting there going, oh, if you do it this way or if you do it that way, it could be better, right? So I feel like having that network, if you're hanging around losers, it's not going to, life's going to be pretty tough for you, and you're probably going to end up in some dark place, you know what I mean? So it's the truth. I've been there. I think we've all been there at one stage. And
you are what your environment is, right?
And it's not nothing against those people. That's the way they are and they're built. But you just got to one day say it's not for me and sort of back out. And you don't want to live alone, but pick the right people. Go and put your energy out there, because it'll be you'll attract the people that with the energy you put out, you know what I mean? So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
For today. I appreciate you sharing your story, Tony Braz. Thank you, the man. And I will have Khyara's company details, Instagram, social handles and everything in the bio of this. So if you want to hit her up about anything PR related, social media related, etc., questions, she's here to help. And yeah, hopefully we see this chick around very soon doing some big things. She's going to be working on a project with us very soon that I will be announcing probably within the next 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, something massive that is going to change my life, definitely. So yeah, can't wait to be in it, you know what I mean? So yep, thanks guys, appreciate it. ONETRIBE Podcast, over and out.